The spring air of 1945 smelled like victory and gasoline in Brooklyn, New York. 22-year-old Private Aiden Cole stood outside Morrison's Auto Sales on Flatbush Avenue, his Army uniform pressed crisp, his duffel bag resting against his polished boots. The war in Europe was winding down, but the fighting wasn't over. Aiden had been given 2 weeks' leave before shipping out to join the final push into Germany. "You sure about this, son?" asked Connor Blake, the graying salesman with oil-stained hands and a limp from the Great War. "That's a lot of money for a car you won't drive for months." Aiden ran his hand along the hood of the 1942 Dodge luxury liner, a pre-war beauty with flowing fenders and chrome that caught the afternoon sun like liquid silver. It wasn't a Charger, not yet. Dodge wouldn't make those until the 60s, but this sedan was everything he'd dreamed of since he was a boy watching cars roll through his neighborhood. "I'm sure," Aiden said, his voice steady. "When I come back, I'm driving this beauty straight home. No buses, no trains, just me and this machine." Connor smiled sadly, the way men who'd seen war often did when young soldiers spoke of the future. "I'll keep her safe for you, free storage until you return." Aiden paid in cash, savings from 2 years of Army pay, money he'd been setting aside while other guys spent theirs on booze and poker. He signed the papers, ran his fingers across the steering wheel one last time, and pressed his palm against the dashboard, leaving a faint print on the polished wood trim. "Wait here, girl," he whispered to the car. "I'll be back before you know it." Before leaving Brooklyn, Aiden stopped at his family's brownstone on Bergen Street. His mother, Harper Cole, stood in the doorway wearing her nursing uniform. She worked double shifts at Brooklyn Hospital to make ends meet since his father died in '38. "You bought it," she said, not as a question, but as a fact. Her eyes were proud and terrified at once. "I did, Ma, and when I get back, I'm taking you for the first ride. We'll drive all the way to Coney Island." Harper pulled him into an embrace that lasted too long, her hands gripping his shoulders as if she could hold him there forever. "You write me every week, Aiden Cole. Every single week." "I will. I promise." His younger sister, Riley Cole, appeared behind their mother, her eyes red-rimmed. At 17, she'd grown up fast during the war years, working at the Navy Yard riveting ships. "You better come home, Aiden. That car's not going to drive itself." He kissed the top of her head. "Keep an eye on it for me, Riles. Make sure Connor doesn't sell it to someone else." 3 days later, Aiden boarded a troop transport in Manhattan, surrounded by hundreds of other soldiers, some fresh-faced and eager, others haunted and returning for second or third tours. As the ship pulled away from the pier, he watched the New York skyline shrink into the gray Atlantic horizon, thinking of chrome and leather seats and the life waiting for him on the other side of the war. The letters started arriving in June 1945, just as summer heat settled over Brooklyn like a wet blanket. Harper Cole would find them in the mailbox, Aiden's handwriting unmistakable, neat, careful, the penmanship of a boy who'd paid attention in school. June 12, 1945. Somewhere in Germany. "Dear Ma and Riley, we crossed the Rhine 2 weeks ago. Can't say much about where we are, but the towns here are mostly rubble. Hard to believe people lived in these places just months ago. I think about home every day, about our block, about the smell of your cooking, Ma, and about that beautiful Dodge waiting for me at Morrison's. I had a dream last night that I was driving it down Ocean Parkway with the windows down, the radio playing Glenn Miller. Riley was in the back seat laughing at something. It felt so real I could almost smell the salt air from the beach. The guys in my unit joked that I talk about that car more than I talk about anything else. Mason Graves, he's from Texas, says I'm in love with a hunk of metal. Maybe I am. But that car represents everything I'm fighting for. The freedom to choose something beautiful. The promise of a future. Tell Connor I'll be there to collect her soon. This war's almost over. Love." Aiden Riley read the letter aloud to their mother in the kitchen, her voice catching on certain words. Harper folded it carefully and placed it in the shoebox where she kept all of Aiden's correspondence, a growing collection of hope and longing. Every Sunday, Riley walked to Morrison's auto sales to check on the Dodge. Connor always let her sit in the driver's seat, though she'd never learned to drive. She'd grip the steering wheel and imagine her brother there beside her, teaching her how to work the clutch, how to feel the engine's rhythm. "He talks about this car in every letter," Riley told Connor one afternoon in July, the garage door open to catch any hint of breeze. "Like it's a person." Connor was polishing the chrome with a soft cloth, his movements reverent. "For boys going to war, something like this becomes more than metal and rubber. It's a promise, a reason to survive." The letters continued through summer and into early fall. Aiden wrote about the German countryside, about towns slowly coming back to life, about the strange quiet of victory after so much noise. He wrote about his friend Logan Reed, who'd saved his life during a skirmish outside Nuremberg. He wrote about wanting to study engineering when he got home, maybe work for Chrysler, design cars of his own someday. September 3, 1945. Dear Ma and Riley, the war's officially over. Japan surrendered last week. You should see the celebrations here, even in the ruins. People are dancing, crying, embracing strangers. We're just waiting for orders to ship home now. Could be weeks, could be months. Army bureaucracy moves slower than molasses. I think about that Dodge every night. I've planned the whole route home from the port, through Manhattan, over the Brooklyn Bridge, down Flatbush to Morrison's. Then I'll drive to Bergen Street, park right in front of the house, and take you both for that ride to Coney Island I promised. I can almost taste the hot dogs already. See you soon." Aiden Harper held that letter longer than the others, reading it 3 times before placing it in the shoebox. "Soon," she whispered to herself, allowing hope to crack through her carefully maintained composure. But October came without another letter. Then November. Then December. By Christmas, Harper's hands shook when she opened the mailbox. Riley stopped visiting Morrison's, unable to face the car that sat waiting, increasingly like a monument to something lost. Connor Blake understood before the telegram arrived. He'd seen it in the last war. The silence that preceded bad news, the way hope curdled into dread. He kept polishing the Dodge anyway, kept it covered with a tarp, kept it ready, because that's what you did for soldiers who made promises. The telegram came on January 8, 1946, delivered by a Western Union boy who looked barely 14. "The Secretary of War desires me to express his deep regret that Private Aiden Cole was killed in action on September 28th in Germany." Harper collapsed in the doorway, the yellow paper fluttering to the floor. Riley caught her mother, both of them sinking to the cold wooden planks, holding each other as the winter wind howled through Brooklyn's empty streets. September 28th. 25 days after his last letter. 25 days after he'd written about coming home. The Dodge remained at Morrison's auto sales through the late 40s and into the 50s. Connor Blake never tried to sell it, never even suggested it to Harper Cole when she came by once a year on the anniversary of the telegram. He simply kept it covered, kept it maintained, kept the battery charged and the tires inflated. "It's his car," Connor would say when other dealers asked why he didn't move it. "Belongs to Private Cole. I'm just holding it." Riley Cole visited more frequently than her mother. She'd graduated high school, taken a job as a secretary at an insurance company in Manhattan, but she'd stop by the garage every few months, always on Saturdays when she had time. In 1952, she brought her fiancé, a kind accountant named Jordan Cross, who'd been too young for the war. Connor let them sit in the car together, and Riley finally told Jordan the whole story, about her brother, about his dreams, about the fingerprints still visible on the dashboard in the right light. "It's like a time capsule," Jordan said softly, touching the steering wheel with something close to reverence. Frozen in 1945. They married that fall, and Riley became Riley Cross. She had children, 2 boys and a girl, and the years rolled forward the way years do, accumulating like dust. The 60s brought change to Brooklyn. New highways, urban renewal, families moving to the suburbs. Morrison's auto sales changed ownership twice, but each time Connor made it a condition of sale. The Dodge stays untouched until the Cole family says otherwise. Harper Cole died in 1967, 21 years after the telegram. Riley cleaned out her mother's apartment and found the shoebox of letters in a closet, tied with a faded blue ribbon. She read them all in one sitting, weeping for the brother she'd barely had time to know as an adult, for the dreams that died in a German field. She brought the letters to the garage and asked Connor, now in his 70s and ready to retire, if she could put something in the car. "Of course," he said. Riley placed the shoebox of letters on the passenger seat, along with a small brass nameplate she'd had engraved. Private Aiden Cole, 1923 to 1945. He promised to come home. Connor helped her mount the nameplate on the dashboard, right where Aiden's handprint still marked the polished wood. "Thank you," Riley said, her voice thick with emotion, "for keeping it safe all these years." "It was an honor," Connor replied. "I just wish he'd made it back to drive it." Connor Blake died in 1974. The garage changed hands again, this time to a young entrepreneur named Tyler Shaw, who turned it into a general storage facility for classic cars. The Dodge remained in the back corner, covered by its tarp, the nameplate glinting whenever someone lifted the fabric to peek underneath. Riley Cross visited less frequently as arthritis and age made the trip from her home in Queens more difficult. But she never forgot. She told her children about Uncle Aiden, about the car, about promises and sacrifice, and the cost of freedom. In 1985, Tyler Shaw approached Riley about possibly selling the Dodge. Classic cars from the 40s were becoming valuable, and collectors were always looking for well-preserved examples. "It's not mine to sell," Riley told him firmly, her voice still strong despite her 70 years. "It belongs to my brother. It'll always belong to him." Tyler never asked again. In 1993, a young automotive historian named Ethan Ward was researching pre-war American cars for his master's thesis at NYU. He'd heard rumors about Morrison's old garage, now called Shaw's Classic Storage, and the Dodge that had supposedly been sitting untouched since World War II. "It's probably just a story," his advisor said. "You know how these legends grow." But Ethan was persistent. He tracked down Tyler Shaw, now in his 50s, and convinced him to let him see the car. Tyler led him to the back of the storage facility, past rows of Corvettes and Mustangs, to a corner where a shape sat under a gray tarp that had itself become vintage. "Hasn't been started since the 70s, Tyler said. "The family still pays storage fees every year, though, like clockwork." When Ethan lifted the tarp, he caught his breath. The Dodge was pristine. Original paint, original chrome, original leather seats that had cracked only slightly with age. And there, on the dashboard, was the nameplate and the shoebox of letters. "Can I read them?" Ethan asked. "The owner gave permission for historical research," Tyler said. "Just be careful. They're fragile." Ethan spent 3 hours in that garage, reading Aiden Cole's letters by the light filtering through the high windows. He photographed the nameplate, documented the car's condition, traced his finger along the faint handprint on the dashboard. This wasn't just a car. It was a monument to a generation, to sacrifice, to the dreams that died in places with names most Americans couldn't pronounce. He called Riley Cross that evening. She was 93. Living in a nursing home in Forest Hills, her mind still sharp despite her body's decline. "Mrs. Cross, my name is Ethan Ward. I'm researching your brother's car." There was a long pause on the line. Then, "You saw it?" "I did." "Ma'am, your brother's story deserves to be told. The letters, the car, everything he represented. Would you be willing to talk to me?" Riley agreed. Over the next 3 months, Ethan visited her weekly, recording her memories of Aiden, of the war years, of waiting for letters that stopped coming. She gave him photographs. Aiden in his uniform, Aiden as a boy in front of their brownstone, Aiden and Riley together at Coney Island in the summer of 1944. "He was supposed to take me driving," Riley said during their last interview, her hands folded in her lap, spotted with age. "He promised he'd teach me. I never learned. It felt wrong, somehow, to learn with anyone else." Ethan's thesis became a documentary project. He contacted local news stations, veterans organizations, automotive museums. The story of Private Aiden Cole and his Dodge spread through the classic car community and military history circles like a quiet revelation. In 1994, the Veterans of Foreign Wars chapter in Brooklyn held a memorial ceremony at Shaw's Classic Storage. Riley Cross attended in a wheelchair, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. Veterans in their 70s and 80s stood at attention as a bugler played taps, the notes echoing off the concrete walls. They unveiled the Dodge with an American flag draped over the hood, and Riley placed her hand where her brothers had rested 49 years earlier. "He kept his promise, you know," she said to the assembled crowd, her voice wavering but clear. "He promised this car would be here when he got home. And it is. It's still waiting." There wasn't a dry eye in the building. Riley Cross died in 1996, 2 weeks before her 96th birthday. Her children, now themselves approaching retirement, inherited the responsibility of the Dodge, along with their mother's final wish: the car should stay where it was, preserved as a memorial, until someone in the family felt called to fulfill Aiden's dream. For years, that someone didn't appear. Riley's children had their own lives, their own cars, their own memories that didn't include an uncle they'd never met. The Dodge remained in storage, increasingly a curiosity, occasionally featured in articles about Brooklyn's history or the greatest generation's sacrifices. Then, in 2003, Riley's great-granddaughter came home from Iraq. Lieutenant Zoe Vance had served in the Army's 101st Airborne Division during the invasion of Iraq, earning a Purple Heart after her convoy hit an IED outside Fallujah. At 26, she returned to Brooklyn with a limp, nightmares, and a profound understanding of what it meant to promise you'd come home. Her grandmother, Riley's daughter Harper Lane, named after her own grandmother, took Zoe to Shaw's Classic Storage one afternoon in November. "I want to show you something," Harper said. When Zoe saw the Dodge, saw the nameplate, sat in the driver's seat and felt the leather that had waited 6 decades for the soldier who bought it, something inside her cracked open. "He never got to drive it," she said, not as a question. "No," Harper replied, "but you're here, and you understand what he felt, planning that drive home, the hope of it, the promise." Zoe visited the car every week through the winter. She researched Aiden's service record, found out he'd died in a meaningless skirmish 3 days after the war was functionally over, a patrol that encountered a holdout Wehrmacht unit that hadn't gotten word of the surrender, killed by men who didn't even know they'd already lost. The senselessness of it felt familiar. War was full of senseless deaths, senseless suffering, senseless loss. In spring 2004, Zoe made a decision. She used her savings and her veterans' benefits to have the Dodge completely restored, not rebuilt, not modified, just carefully, lovingly brought back to running condition. Original engine, original parts wherever possible, the nameplate polished but left in place, the letters preserved in an archival box. When the restoration was complete, Zoe invited every surviving member of the Cole family, every veteran she knew, and the press. Tyler Shaw, now 76, stood beside the Dodge as Zoe addressed the crowd. "Private Aiden Cole promised to drive this car home," she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "He didn't make it, but his promise can still be kept. Today, we're taking the drive he planned." She got behind the wheel, the first person to drive the car in 59 years. Harper Lane sat in the passenger seat, holding the archival box of letters. Behind them, a caravan of cars followed. Family members, veterans, historians, People who'd never met Aiden Cole, but understood what he represented. They drove the route Aiden had described in his letters, through Manhattan, over the Brooklyn Bridge, down Flatbush Avenue. People on the streets stopped and stared at the procession, this vintage Dodge moving slowly, deliberately, accompanied by cars with American flags and "Welcome Home Private Cole" signs. They drove past the lot where Morrison's Auto Sales had stood, now a CVS pharmacy. They drove past the brownstone on Bergen Street, now divided into apartments. They drove all the way to Coney Island, where the amusement parks had changed, but the ocean remained constant, eternal. Zoe parked the Dodge on the boardwalk, the Atlantic stretching out before them, gray and infinite under the April sky. "We made it," Harper whispered, touching the dashboard where her great-uncle's fingerprints still marked the wood. He made it home. The car was donated to the Brooklyn Historical Society later that year, where it remains on permanent display. The nameplate stays mounted on the dashboard. Aiden's letters are exhibited in a climate-controlled case beside it. And every Memorial Day, a veteran, rotating each year, representing different wars, different generations, sits in the driver's seat for the day, so that Private Aiden Cole is never alone, and his promise is never forgotten. The Dodge never runs again after that single drive. It doesn't need to. It fulfilled its purpose, to wait, to remember, and finally, 59 years late, to carry a soldier home.